And welcome in to another edition of A Closer Look. I'm your host, Dwayne Nelson, and with me today is Renee Rogers. She is the curator of exhibits for Birthplace of Country Music Museum in Bristol.
Hi there.
How are you? So glad to have you here today. And talk a little bit about how long this has been around. You've been around several years now.
We have. I mean, the museum itself has been opened for, it'll be 3 years. So we opened in August 2014, but obviously the Birthplace of Country Music organization has been around longer than that, preparing for the museum, but also the merger with Bristol Rhythm and Roots several years ago.
And the neat thing about this is for the people that may not know, this is kind of the place where country music got its kickoff and where it really kind of started.
Well, and yeah, so in 1927 we had the Bristol Sessions in Bristol, and that was with the Victor Talking Machine Company. Ralph Peer came down to do these early location recording sessions. This was something that had been happening for a while, I mean, all the way back to like 1922, 1923.
Wow.
But what happened in Bristol, while it was part of that sort of history of searching for this type of music and recording this early country music. What happened in Bristol was actually quite special because there was this sort of conflation of events that made them very significant recordings. And that's why we've been designated the birthplace of country music. So it's the very early start of the early commercial country music industry.
And you're talking about really, this is something like pre-Depression time when all of this started.
Yes, yeah, and this is when the record companies, things were ramping up with the technology, so there were people out there buying the records, the radio shows were developing, and there was a market for this type of music, and the radio executives and producers were out there looking for music that they thought would sell.
How were you able to preserve all of this music? Because, I mean, back in the 20s and 30s, those were kind of difficult ways to keep things.
Well, a lot of technology has gone into finding ways to protect these kind of assets, and of course there's a lot of remastered recordings from as far back from that point in time, but also further back. So there's people out there who have the expertise to rescue these items and preserve them for us.
And when people come into the Birthplace of Country Music, they actually kind of get to go back in time and see everything kind of the way it was.
Well, they really get to experience the music. I mean, that's the museum really, every single part of the museum that you go into is full of sound. We have 4 theater film experiences that also take you back deeper into the content so that you really get a sense of what happened. We have the orientation film that gives you that history and tells you a little bit about the legacy of what those recordings created. But we also have all these other films that sort of give you other aspects of it, like the techniques and styles that were being played back then, really exploring and digging deep into that. The gospel and sacred music, because that was a huge part of the recordings that were done in 1927, and also when Ralph Peer came back to Bristol in 1928 to record again. And also then looking beyond 1927 and 1928 to see the ways that music has influenced music beyond American music and general roots music. We have the folk revival of the 1960s. We have the festival culture that we're so familiar with now. And you can look back and see where these recordings and the music that these recordings came from are hugely influential on that.
And a lot of the talent that was displayed in that came right here from our region, the Appalachian region.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the reasons why Ralph Peer came here, is because he was told by Ernest Stoneman that there was good music in this area, that he was going to find the music he was looking for. And of the there were 19 acts that came to the 1927 Bristol Sessions, many of whom were Southwest Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, North Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia, all in this region.
And the Carters, I guess, had a real big influence on that too as well.
They did. I mean, the 1927 Bristol Sessions was the first time that they were recorded. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why those recordings are so significant. And of course, they're still hugely influential. I mean, the Carter family fold is somewhere that people still go every Saturday night to hear that music.
And it kind of gives them that taste of the music that was in that era and that genre there.
Yeah, and I mean, you can hear that at the Carter Fold, you can hear that at our museum, but you can listen to it on our Radio Bristol, and hear that kind of music every day, and really, again, hear our DJs dig deep into that content to share it with the people who are listening.
And then I guess there's the ability to listen online.
There is, yeah. So it's a local low-power FM station, but you can also get an app. You can download the app on your phone and live stream it online.
Oh, that's incredible. Now, you have a really neat theater there as well.
We do. Our performance theater, it's about 100 seats, so it's quite an intimate experience when you go to a performance there. And that theater, we have loads of great music. We have wonderful musicians who come to play. We also broadcast live radio shows from there. We have our Radio Bristol sessions, Farm and Fun Time, that type of thing. But we have a lot of other types of events and programming that we do in there. We do workshops, we do film screenings, seminars and symposiums, all sorts of different things. We've just recently had our pick-along summer camps, and we had our kids performing in there, and doing radio shows and that type of thing. So it's actually a really great space for all sorts of different events.
Now, do you have a relationship with CMT as far as artists coming by and that sort of thing?
Well, we have a lot of artists who stop by, who are traveling, who are on tour, not directly to CMT necessarily, but though we have had CMT journalists in our museum. But these are usually, musicians who are on tour and who get into contact, or who our radio people contact, or our other bookers contact for performances there.
And it's really a neat theater. I've had the privilege of enjoying that theater and watching musicians perform there. And it seems like that it's just, like you say, it's kind of quaint. And it's the acoustics are great, and it's just wonderful.
And it's up close and personal. You feel like you're really part of the performance.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't feel far away from it, which is nice.
Yeah. Now, you've got a lot of exhibits coming up, but a special exhibit, Things Come Apart.
Yes.
Talk about that.
So that's been in our special exhibits gallery since July. It's there through October 8th. It's a special exhibit from the Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibit Service. So we're pretty excited about that. It's something that we've been working on for a couple of years almost now. And it's basically, there's an artist called Todd McClellan who took these wonderful photographs and created these objects basically from everyday items. So a mechanical pencil, an accordion, a Swiss Army knife, a mantle clock, and he's taken them down to their individual components and then displayed them in these photographs and in these acrylic-based objects. And it's a way, he's done that to explore the way that they were designed, how they were made, how the technology has changed over time. So for instance, you have a mantle clock, and then a flip clock, and a mechanical watch, and a digital watch, all the different ways of telling time, but that evolution of technology. So it's a really great way for people to sort of look at the things that are around them and think about their functionality, think about what design went into them to make them work so well for us, and just how they're a part of our everyday life and make our lives a little bit easier.
Oh, absolutely. And this exhibit, you say, is going to run until when now?
Till October 8th.
October the 8th. What is the cost for folks wanting to come into the museum and look around?
So the general admission price is $13 plus the Virginia admission tax. There are also discounts for like military, students, seniors, that type of thing. You can find all that information on our website, birthplaceofcountrymusic.org. And of course, we sometimes have promotions like Museum Day Live is coming up in September, and that's a free admission day, for instance.
Now, your Family Fun Day, let's talk about that. That's coming up on August the 26th.
It is, yes. And so the Family Fun Day is specific programming related to the special exhibit Things Come Apart. So all the activities that we do there will be sort of geared around that concept of technology and design and that type of thing. So we're going to make it into a type of maker event. We're going to have the Bristol Public Library there doing a 3D printer demonstration. We're going to have one of our artisans from the museum store there talking about how to make art from found objects. He makes art from like old pipes and pieces of bicycles and that kind of thing.
Awesome.
So that'll be a lot of fun. Our Rhythm and Roots Green team is going to be there doing a recycling craft. Plus we'll have some other activities all to do with the idea of maker and getting kids to get really hands-on and interested in how things work.
Are you finding that the way the museum is geared, it's geared toward kids as well.
Oh, of
And-
course, yeah.
And that's one of the prime things that you all focus on, is trying to get them kind of educated early on.
It is. You know, our permanent exhibits, we have a lot of school groups who come to the museum to explore that local history and to learn more about the music and the technology. This special exhibit is great for school groups because it really is very much supportive of the local schools and their curricula. You know, it's very STEAM focused, and that's of course why we're trying to do these things like the Family Fun Day to bring kids in. And the other thing about the Family Fun Day is that families will get free admission to the Things Come Apart exhibit on the same day. But we've had our pick-along summer camps. We have lots of things that kids can do at the museum, and they all seem to love it. You know, they sort of get into that immersion theater and dance, which is the whole purpose
Right.
of the immersion theater. Adults get a little bit more embarrassed and stand on the sidelines, but the kids know what to do in there, and they have a good time.
And that's the greatest thing about it is that you can start this focusing early on, and it gives the kids that opportunity to get involved,
yeah.
and parents get involved.
And it's, you know, it's really gratifying for us. I remember right around the time that we opened, a kid came out of the orientation film, probably about 7 or 8 years old, and one of our volunteers overheard her say to her parents, "I never knew I came from somewhere so important." And that was wonderful, you know,
Right.
because that's going to give her an interest in her local history. It's maybe she's going to pick up a banjo or a guitar one day and want to play that music. So for us, it's really great to see how kids react to the museum.
On our next segment, I want to talk a little bit about that and how to get kids kind of involved in musical instruments and that sort of thing early on, and their involvement in it. And I'll have more with Renee Rogers from the Birthplace of Country Music Museum in Bristol.